Hello, welcome to Simon's Trading Channel. My voice is a bit dodgy, so apologies for that. Got a bit of the old pharyngitis. Anyway, happy Tuesday to you. I hope you're all well and you've had a fun day. It looks like Bitcoin hasn't. In fact, for the last week, so this high here goes back to Tuesday last week. The whole last week has been downside, more or less. So anyway, just before I get into the price action analysis, just want to remind you it's not financial advice. So here's the 4-hour chart. I love the 4-hour chart. I think anyone who's been watching this channel for a little while now knows that. And you can see all the moves that Bitcoin has done in the last 7 weeks. That's right. It's I think it's now into its 8th week within this crazy range. And if you look back about 5 weeks ago, I suggested that this could well be a range for the next 8 weeks. Well, this is the 8th week. And so if there's going to be a range break, then I suggested it might be this week. Now, that's just a ridiculous prophecy, but it's based on the previous consolidation timelines in the current bull run. So you see that easier on a weekly. Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. So each of these consolidation areas was 8 weeks, apart from this one, which was 13. So that's what Bitcoin does. It consolidates, it expands, not expands. It consolidates, it goes up. It consolidates, it goes down. Wherever the in whichever direction the momentum is. And so this is the 8th week. But I have to say, as of Tuesday, as of today, this week does not look good. And if I come back to the 4-hour now, you can see, based on the premise of spending 8 weeks within this range, or at least 8 weeks within this range, you can clearly see the momentum is to the downside at this point. Now, therefore, if you had a bias as to which way, at this point in time, should Bitcoin break this range, it doesn't take the brains of an archbishop, as they say, to conclude the answer to that question is to the downside, because it's very close to doing it right now. Hovering around 60,000 as it is. And if you check in with if I check in with my momentum master of choice, which is a MACD, bit old school, but I like to use the zero line cross as a spin on momentum, and it does logically work out that way. If you just look at this 7-week period of the range, MACD crossed from the top to the bottom. There was a move down. MACD crossed from the bottom to the top. There was a move up. MACD crossed from the top to the bottom, move down. From the bottom to the top, move up. Blah, 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 right? You can see it yourself. I wouldn't trade that on its own if I was you. Point of caution. But if you're using it as I do, it's just a reference tool for momentum, then with the MACD on the 4-hour being below the zero line, momentum is still to the downside, and you can see that playing out. So at this point, where this price action is, very close to the bottom of the range, the longer that, I'll phrase it this way. If Bitcoin is going to treat the bottom of this range, which is pretty much 59,000, as support, and if that support is to hold, it would be more likely if it bounced quickly. So like here, this was just a wick down, right? So within 4 hours, it bounced off the bottom. This wasn't quite on the bottom, but it's close to. But there was an impulsive move to the upside following the retest around the area. Here, a wick down. It was just a few candles to bounce back up. Yeah, it didn't get above the midpoint then. Then there were 2 more challenges on the bottom of the range, both of which were quickly bounce to the upside. So for that to continue, as in for this range to not be broken to the downside, that's more likely if Bitcoin can bounce quickish. And so I would suggest that maybe by this time tomorrow or maybe Thursday, you'd want to see a bounce. And for clarification, personally, 62,500 would be a good place for if Bitcoin does indeed bounce off the bottom in a meaningful way. Getting back above 62,500 on 4-hour closures or dailies would then look good for another week within the range. Conversely, if Bitcoin hangs around below 62.5 and does this sort of thing, I can do a little drawing. I do like doing drawings. So, I mean, it might just go, but if it doesn't just go, and it hits up against resistance, something like this, that would logically suggest that the range is going to be broken to the downside rather than a continuation of the range play when you would want to see a swift bounce from this area. So I hope that makes sense. So basically, selling pressure up against support, the longer it goes on, the more likely it is to break down. I probably should have just said that in the first place. And if it did, then there are probably a few sticky areas. First one, sort of 56 and a half, something like that. Probably somewhere in between. So something like, ignore what I just said, something like 55 and a half, but then probably a more realistic target for the slightly longer term to the downside, if the range is broken, would be somewhere between 53 and 50,000, so low 50s. So yeah, that would be the bad news if you're interested in, well, if you're long or if you're an investor, I guess. However, could be a good buying opportunity, because even if it does that, and I don't know it will, but this has been a bit of a bearish video because the last week has been bearish. But even if it did that, now this chart might look a bit scrappy, but as you can see, this is still very much in an uptrend, and it's probably due another higher low on the weekly anyway, on the higher time frames. And so at the end of the day, in the absence of a complete meltdown of Bitcoin, and I would suggest that a complete meltdown would probably occur below about 45,000. So in the absence of that, it's probably just going to be a higher low, and therefore if you're investing or if you're looking to long on the higher time frames, it would be an area, any kind of pullback from here or lower, as long as it doesn't melt down, as I just mentioned, would be a good opportunity to look for an entry. That's in my humble opinion, it's not financial advice. Now, that may not happen because Bitcoin may pick up its socks and march on upwards from here. And as I said a minute ago, 62.5 for me on a 4 hours or daily closure would cement the fact that it has bounced again from the range, and then more likely for more upside. But up until then, momentum still to the downside. Certainly is on the daily, on the 4 hour, on the hourly, I imagine, yeah, and even down to the 15-minute. Yeah, it's all to the downside. So all the low time frames are currently momentum to the downside. I'm just going to put this out there. This support has been tested 1, 2, 3, 4 times, maybe plus 4/5 times on a 4 hour time frame. On the daily, it's been Well, yeah, it's kind of been tested 4 times on the daily, even if you discount this one. So this is the fifth test. The more tests that occur, the more likely it is to break down, and that's just logic. If you take a hammer to a wall once or twice, maybe it'll stand up. But if you take a hammer to a wall, several times, and eventually something's going to break. So food for thought, food for thought. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. That's 10.5 minutes. Don't want to witter on for too long. Try and preserve some of my voice for tomorrow's video. And that reminds me, if you've enjoyed this price action analysis, please like and subscribe. And if you haven't, and you don't want to hear maybe a slightly less croaky version, then don't come back tomorrow, because I'll be doing it all again for midweek Bitcoin price action analysis. Take care and enjoy what's rest of your Tuesday. Bye.